Okay, imagine the most valuable metals we have, right? Platinum, palladium, rhodium, PGMs. Now picture finding a literal flying mountain of rock, an asteroid, where these metals aren't just like double the concentration, but 5,000 times higher than anything we can dig up here on Earth. And we're building the tech right now to actually go and get it. Welcome back to the deep dive. Our whole mission here is giving you the shortcut to understanding these massive shifts happening. The space economy, it just hit a record $613 billion in 2024. And listen to this, almost 78% of that, it's commercial companies, not government stuff. So we've pulled from your sources the three big economic breakthroughs beyond just rockets that are going to define this, like $1.8 trillion space future. At the end of this, you'll know something 99% of people don't about where your future medicine, even your mobile service, will actually come from.
Yeah, the scale it's genuinely staggering. And these projections, they're not just wild guesses. We're looking at the sector hitting maybe $1.4 trillion by 2032. That's an 11.7% growth rate year over year. That's huge. And the money flowing in, over $10 billion in VC funding each year for 2023 and 2024. But here's the really interesting part, I think. It shows investor confidence. 41% of that cash is now going into late-stage deals. That signals a big shift, you know. Investors aren't just betting on dreams anymore. They're funding companies ready to scale up, build the infrastructure, actually turn a profit. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, look, government and military, they're still the anchor. They provide that stable demand, those big contracts. But it's the commercial growth that's really driving the why. It's the entrepreneurs cutting costs so dramatically that even that anchor demand gets cheaper, more sustainable.
Right, and that cost reduction is exactly where we need to start. That's insight one, the space travel price crash. We're moving like really fast towards mass market prices here. I mean, just look at the current prices. A quick hop to suborbital space. 4, maybe 6 minutes floating. Virgin Galactic charges $450,000 a seat now. Orbital trips, actually staying up there, still around $55 million per person. It's astronomical. But the disruption is already happening. SpaceX, right? Their Polaris Dawn mission sent regular folks, not NASA astronauts, 3 times higher than the space station. And analysts think their big new rocket Starship, it's designed for 100 passengers, could eventually sell tickets for just $100,000. Okay, let's unpack this. Wait, $100,000 for an orbital trip. That's like a 99.9% price cut. The only way numbers like that even make sense is reusability. It just completely duts the main cost of getting to space.
A 99.9% cut is, it's staggering. But that projection really hinges on solving that core cost, the rocket itself. When you look at the economics, RLV's reusable launch vehicles, like SpaceX's Falcon 9, they're up to 65% cheaper than the old throwaway rockets, and the data backs it up. The actual cost to refuel a Falcon 9 first stage, about $1 million. Refurbishing it, maybe another $3 million. This is what brought their launch price down to around $56.5 million already.
Yeah.
And they had that first mover advantage, plus the constant launches for Starlink. That let them really nail the reusability economics. That's why they launched nearly 87% of all global payload mass. It's the kind of efficiency leap people compare to like what jet engines did for air travel 60 years ago. Suddenly, frequent high-volume trips become possible.
Okay, so if launch costs are basically collapsing, what's the first big thing that enables what becomes profitable? That takes us straight to insight two, the orbital factory. Basically manufacturing things in space that you just can't make down here. The key idea is microgravity manufacturing. See, down here on Earth, forces like gravity, buoyancy, convection, they mess things up when you're trying to make perfect materials. Microgravity just gets rid of those problems. So instead of, say, a drug crystal forming with flaws, like a bad pearl maybe, in space, it can grow perfectly, like a flawless diamond just suspended there. And we know this is big. 60% of pharma execs, they see this as highly disruptive for their industry.
Yes, and the medical side is probably the most immediate breakthrough for you, for the consumer. Microgravity lets you grow much better crystal structures for complex drugs. There's a company, BioOrbit. They're working on tech to turn those hours-long IV cancer treatments you have to get at a clinic into simple injections you could potentially do at home, like insulin, all thanks to better protein crystals grown in space.
And this isn't just theory anymore, right? Varda Space Industries, they actually did this. They produced crystals of ritonavir, that's an HIV drug, up in orbit in 2023, brought them back down, proved the whole concept works. Production, reentry, recovery, feasible. Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me on the tech side. Semiconductors. Computer chips. NASA's working with companies like Intel on using this electrohydrodynamic printing EHD and microgravity for chips. Right. What does that actually mean in plain English?
Basically, it means chips built in space could be faster and cleaner because gravity isn't there, messing up the tiny wiring. On Earth, gravity causes these little imperfections, they call them voiding defects, limits how fast and powerful chips can get. in microgravity. They get better trench filling, fewer flaws, so better components for like next-gen AI, defense systems, that kind of thing. United Semiconductors even launched an experiment payload back in November 2024 just to push this exact idea.
Wow. Okay, so that shift from making stuff for space to making stuff in space for Earth, that flows right into Insight 3, the interplanetary resource rush, mining space itself.
Exactly. And the first stop, the immediate prize, is the moon. Specifically, water ice on the moon. NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter confirmed it's there, hiding in these permanently shadowed craters near the poles. And this is huge because you can split that water into oxygen and hydrogen, rocket fuel. Basically turns the moon into a giant gas station in space. And companies are already building this. There's this moon as a service model. The rocket mining system, for instance, they project they can mine like 12 craters a day, get 100 kilos of ice from each. Do the math. That's over 420,000 kilograms of lunar water a year. That dramatically cuts down how much fuel you need to haul all the way from Earth.
And then there's the sort of long shot jackpot helium-3.
Right, helium-3. It's a light isotope deposited by solar winds over billions of years. It's seen as a potential fuel for future fusion reactors. You've got startups like Interloon valuing it at maybe $20 million a kilogram. Huge potential value. But, and this is a big but, the challenge is immense. The concentration in the lunar soil, the regolith, it's tiny, like 3 to 15 parts per billion. So to get just 33 kilograms a year, enough for maybe one small fusion plant, you'd have to process over 1,200 tons of lunar soil.
Yeah.
Every single hour.
Wait, hold on. 1,200 tons an hour. We're talking about putting a massive industrial strip mine on the moon just for one power plant. That's a whole different scale of technology and, frankly, mindset needed before that's realistic, which I guess is why some companies are looking even further out. Past the moon, back to those asteroids we started with. The hunt for platinum group metals, PGMs.
Precisely. Astroforge, they're targeting these M-type asteroids because, like you said at the start, the PGM concentration could be 5,000 times higher than digging deep here on Earth. Their idea involves using lasers and magnets to sort of sift out the valuable PGM dust. If they can make that work, I mean, that doesn't just tweak commodity markets, it completely rewrites them.
Okay, but we need the reality check here, too. Astroforge. Their first couple of missions, Broke R1 and Odin, they failed. Communication problems. So it just shows, the economic pool is massive, but the technical difficulty of actually doing this millions of miles away is still enormous. Which kind of brings us nicely to the deeper value section and maybe the darker side of all this rapid growth. This huge boom in space activity, especially satellites, they make up, 61% of the market? It means low Earth orbit, LEO is getting crowded fast.
This is the really critical sustainability problem we face. You have these mega constellations, Starlink, Kuiper, others coming. Predictions are we could see over 100,000 operational satellites up there by 2030. And that raises the specter of the Kessler syndrome. That's the nightmare scenario. A chain reaction of collisions making LEO basically unusable for decades. We're already tracking over 30,000 pieces of junk bigger than 10 centimeters up there. The whole $613 billion economy depends on not letting that happen. So ironically, sustainability itself becomes a market. Cleaning up debris, using robotic arms, nets, even lasers. That market's projected to hit $0.6 billion by 2028, growing fast.
But the real fix, the long-term vision for a kind of circular space economy is this idea called ITHAM, in space servicing, assembly, and manufacturing. So instead of just launching disposable satellites, we fix them, upgrade them, refuel them, and maybe even more importantly, we assemble big things in orbit, like solar power stations, reduces waste, reduces launch risk.
Exactly. And that ISAM capability is what unlocks the ultimate hidden bonus we wanted to mention, space-based solar power. SBSP. The concept is simple, really. Huge solar arrays way up in geostationary orbit, collecting sunlight, 247, no night, no clouds. Then they beam that energy wirelessly down to receiving stations on Earth. Clean, continuous power.
And Caltech actually showed the wireless power transmission part works just last year, 2023. So what's the payoff down here? Well, a study from King's College London estimated SBSP could cut Europe's need for land-based renewables by 80% by 2050. Think about that. The sheer amount of land that frees up, the environmental impact avoided, it's potentially transformative. Okay, so let's quickly recap the three huge shifts we've talked about driving this multi-trillion-dollar future. First, the price crash. RLVs, reusability, bringing that potential $100 K orbital ticket closer. Second, the microgravity factory revolution. Better drugs, faster chips made in space. And third, that interplanetary resource race, starting with lunar water for fuel, maybe eventually asteroid platinum.
Right. And all this commercial frenzy, this gold rush, it slams right into a fundamental legal problem, maybe the biggest risk, actually. This entire $613 billion commercial space economy. It operates under the 1967 Outer Space Treaty, signed by pretty much everyone. And that treaty explicitly says no nation can claim sovereignty over or own space or any celestial body, the moon, asteroids, whatever.
Oh,
However, you've got 56 countries now signed up to the Artemis Accords. And those accords, they specifically include guidelines for how to extract space resources. So you have this massive tension, foundational international law versus, well, commercial reality and necessity. The questions leaves for you to think about is, how do we sort out private property rights for lunar water for asteroid metals when the Bedrock Treaty says nobody can own the land itself? How that question gets answered. That's going to determine who really profits in this new frontier, and maybe how it benefits all of us, or doesn't.
Yeah, that's the ultimate challenge, isn't it? The law is always racing to catch up with the tech. Always. Okay, next time we're diving deep into AI's impact on global supply chains. Think about it. What happens when satellites and quantum computing basically eliminate human error from every delivery route on Earth? And how does that whole orbital logistics system then get used to support the first colonies on Mars? You really don't want to miss how this stuff connects directly back to your daily life. Every insight gets deeper on the second listen, so make sure you save this episode in your library. We'll talk soon.